Verse 13 opens in a very emphatic, very direct, maybe even very dogmatic way. James pulls no punches here when he says, "Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God." Now, why would he feel the need to say that? Why would James feel the need to put it that way? Perhaps it was the case that some of the believers that he now writes to had fallen into sin, and they were in some way or other blaming God. Maybe the poor believers described in verse 9 as those of low degree, maybe instead of rejoicing in their salvation as James tells them to, maybe they were murmuring about their lot in life. And perhaps the rich believers mentioned in verse 10 were overcome with pride, and they had forgotten the mercy and grace of God to them. And in the midst of their sin, these believers were pointing the finger at God. And they were imagining that somehow or other God was responsible for them having sinful thoughts and sinful actions, as if God had tempted them to sin. It sounds appalling, doesn't it? But it's how the human mind can work. In fact, it's how the human mind does work. You go back in your mind's eye to the start of time, to Genesis chapter 3, back to the Garden of Eden, back to Adam and Eve. And when God challenges Adam about his sin in the garden, Genesis 3 verse 9, the Lord God called unto Adam and said unto him, Where art thou? And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. And God said to Adam, Who told thee that thou wast naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat? It's a very simple question. Hast thou eaten of the tree that I commanded thee thou shouldest not eat? And Adam said this, The woman whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. Now notice what Adam is saying there. He is saying to God, as God has challenged him about his sin, Adam says to God, The woman whom thou gavest me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. He's insinuating to God, if you hadn't given me this woman, if you hadn't created her and brought her to me and joined us together as husband and wife, if you had not done what you did, I would not have sinned as I did. That's what Adam is saying to God. And he tries to shift the blame onto Eve, but he also tries to shift the blame onto God. That's the way we think sometimes. We look for someone or something else to blame for our sin. We might blame our circumstances. We might blame our lot in life. We might blame the times we live in. We might blame the people we're surrounded by. We might blame the state of the nation. We will think of something. We will think of something. But when all is said and done, believer, what we're doing there is we are essentially trying to blame God. James gives a very serious caution against that way of thinking. He says, Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God.